being shared right now. And this is beautiful. And this is all part of what we want to cultivate in this community. The final, there's a chair right here. Go over and try to make it a little scene. But the final piece, ultimately you saw it in the mission statement, is funding. These entrepreneurs, to get their start, and even presently to buy into these businesses, needed funding. And so Tommy's going to talk a little bit about Mammoth as a VC fund, and talk on the funding, one of the funding partners, you could say, that we have right here in Fort William. So I'm excited to learn a lot more from Tommy as well. Welcome, Tommy.
Thanks, John. Really appreciate it. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Do my best to just sure. No, that's okay. If you can hear me, let me know. If you can't, just raise your hand up. Speak up. I accidentally became a healthcare venture capitalist. So I started out actually as a triple major, Bible, youth ministry, and music. And I was one of those people that did not have the gift of music. My wife does. She is phenomenal. My kid does. He's like a Mozart. But I did not have the gift of music. So I found out very quickly this was not a good path to be on. And so spent time in youth ministry. Absolutely loved it until I got burnt out on middle schoolers. You can imagine that. And so then just needed a job. I wanted to marry a girl, and so a guy in our worship team at church gave me an internship doing this financial stuff. And I was like, yeah, all right, I'll go do it. Well, I fell in love with it because you got to actually be a pastor at work every day. And so it was incredible, but along the way, I always had this entrepreneurial itch. And so I kept starting businesses. I started my first one when I was 19, and it was a miserable failure, absolute failure. Second and third, same thing. The fourth one, though, actually started to take off. And I could see it was going to be successful, but it wasn't yet. And so I remember vividly, it was 2007. We were at that point, the business was going well, but it was just slow. And I got this letter from our kids' school. We have three awesome kids, now all teenagers, which you can pray for me. Unfortunately, they are like phenomenal. So far, you're just praying for us to be good parents. But I get this letter from my kids' school. They were in elementary at the time. And it said, if you as a family of 5 earn less than $32,000, we are worried you're not going to feed your children. So we will give them free breakfast and lunch at school. And I remember breaking into tears when I got that letter, because that year we earned $16,000. And by the way, this was my 10th year in business. So a lot of times you see the glamorous side of these people that do really well in business. Feels like it happened overnight. I became an overnight success after a decade of failure. So that's how it worked. But I got this letter from my kids' school and realized, oh my gosh, so that same night I was looking at my application for General Motors, just thinking, we're $250,000 in credit card debt. You've heard bankruptcy 3 times now. I'm like, we're going to have to file bankruptcy, which, as a financial guy, not a good thing, and extra bad. And just thinking, I'll go work at GM, because I just felt like nothing I'm doing is working. And I'd worked at Honda over in Ohio, and I was really good on the assembly line. Like, I could do that job. And so I just thought, I'm going to go to GM. And that night, I remember going into my kid's room, and they were sharing a room, and one kid's on this side of the wall, one kid's over here. And I remember walking in and just seeing both of these guys. And I'm so thankful for Daryl's courage to be able, and Kara's, to be able to talk about their depression, because again, you see the glamorous side of business. And I went into their room that night and seriously believed with my whole heart that those little boys would be better with my life insurance money than with me. And that was my low point. And I always say it that way because I don't have the courage yet to say it with suicidal thoughts. I'll get there eventually with guys like this in my corner. But that's where I was at. And I remember getting on my knees that night and just saying, finally realizing that the business wasn't mine, the success wasn't mine. And just praying, God, this has always been yours. And I finally realized it. And so I'm going to serve you, I'm going to love you, I'm going to worship you no matter what. And I'm going to keep going if that's what you want. And I'm going to go to GM and I'm going to be a pastor on the assembly line at GM if that's what you want. And I hate to talk about it this way because it doesn't always work out like this. But over the next 2 years, it was a moonshot. And that company grew into a nationwide powerhouse in our industry. And a decade later, I was able to sell. And within 1 year, we paid off the $250,000 in credit card debt. And so it took 10 years to ramp up, but then it just went like to the moon. And so when we sold, I had to then figure out, what am I supposed to do? And one of the things that Daryl said that really just stands out to me is that the calling is our aspect of showing up and being obedient to God. And there are a lot of times in business where I thought I was doing it. But I look back at my heart and realize in those moments when I lacked joy, when I lacked any excitement, I was not doing it for him. I was doing it for me in one way or another. And so, going into the next chapter of life, that's just where I really spend my time on my knees the most to say, God, what am I supposed to do? And I haven't had a great way to describe it until tonight. But God really designed me to plant and water. I don't know how to actually plow. Like, that's where we need great private equity comes a little later than venture capital. Venture capital is such a good fit for me because you don't know what's happening under the ground all the time. And I'm okay with that side of faith and knowing that if I show up and I do what I'm called to do, that God's in control of the increase or the lack of the increase. And I absolutely fell in love with venture capital because what venture capital is, and we call it VC in the industry, you can ignore that, but what it is you're investing in early companies with the idea that you're going to help them accelerate their growth. And when it goes well, it goes really, really well. The venture capital firms that do a great job, the types of returns that they expect are 40 to 50% per year. I mean, it's massive, but it is the highest end of risk and return in the investment world. Because when it doesn't go well, it's not like a bond where at least you get most of your money back. You lose every penny. So it's high risk, high return. And I tell everyone, most people shouldn't invest in venture capital. Most people shouldn't take that type of risk. It's very much for surplus dollars. And so I don't want to spend a lot of time tonight because we have some great Q&A I want to get to. I'll spend maybe 3 more minutes and tell you about our fund. I am just blown away, honored that I now get to lead the largest fund that's based right here in Fort Wayne. I mean, it is at least the largest fund that takes outside investors. And I mean, for a kid that was the son of a single mom who was an elementary school teacher, I just pinch myself every day that I get to go out and help create jobs and ultimately bring the future of healthcare to the world. I mean, it's an incredible honor, and be a pastor doing that. And it's great. So, thanks. Does that mean I'm over by 2 minutes, or that I have 2 minutes?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. All right, so high level, our fund grew out of an ecosystem. Again, just more by demand. I never set out and said, oh, I got to have my own fund. What we have is an ecosystem. What's really fun, if you drive down Illinois Road, now you won't miss it, in the Summit Dental building, which is kind of cool that one of the owners of Summit Dental is one of the people that has brought Keller Williams to Fort Wayne. It's his wife. So we leased their basement, so pretty cool. we lease their lower level, and Vestia is a firm that manages money primarily for healthcare professionals around the country. So we manage it's actually about $600 million. And so we were already doing that, working with some of the leading doctors in each of their specialties all over the country. I was very, very honored. This is before I went into politics, so ignore that side. But I at one point, I was writing a book, and I said, man, if I could have any doctor in the world endorse this book, who would I pick? And I looked and I said, who is a believer? And somebody that's so well respected in their field of medicine that they're recognized as the best in the world. And again, this was before politics, so ignore that side. I looked and I said, Ben Carson, there's a guy. His book, Winning Big, absolutely changed my focus. And so I said, I want Ben Carson to endorse my book. And somehow that happened. And that's part of what exploded our company. It was like crazy. And so that really put us on the map. We get to work with some of the top doctors in the world. I'm so honored. One of the guys reinvented battlefield medicine. And they saved thousands upon thousands of lives. And we get to take care of this slow and steady money. Not the venture capital side. We also have a company that does hospital and surgery center work. So when doctors want to own hospitals and surgery centers, there's a whole process, and so that's we have a company that's done over $1 billion in those transactions, and some technology companies that kind of support all this. And so our fund just really was born out of the demand that came from that. I just want to show you real fast in my 16 seconds. Matthew, thanks for laughing. I'm going to show you real quick a couple of the companies we've had the honor of investing in. I pinch myself, guys. It's just been, I can't take any credit because I'm not a brilliant scientist to create this stuff, but one of the doctors that I have the privilege to be a business partner with is one of the leading cardiologists in the world. He was the chief of cardiology at the Cleveland Clinic, and it started inventing medical devices. He came from India as a child, started inventing medical devices, and has sold those companies for over $1 billion. And then had this idea one day, talking with one of his patients, who happened to be the leading metallurgist for NASA. And he said to this guy, what would be the perfect metal for the human body? And they went back, all their PhDs worked on it, and they came back with this metal, and they said, this would be so much better than anything that we have right now. It would be lower infection rate, twice as strong, half the size. And so he immediately got patents on it all over the globe and said, well, gosh, if anybody's going to put that in the human body, they've got to go through us. And then he went out and got FDA clearance, and I had the privilege of raising the capital for this company before I even really knew what venture capital was, invested in it, and this shows you what the metal can do. This is the leading cervical plate. This thing sits behind your esophagus after surgery for the rest of your life and blocks your airway. This is how much smaller we can get with our super alloy. And 19 days after we led that investment round, they got FDA clearance. And so 19 days later, our investors' money doubled in 19 days. Like, it was not skill. I will never do that again. unless I get lucky. But it's been really rewarding to be a part of that. We can take the same technology and do the same thing in the heart. And so we're able to save the lives of children who can't have valve replacements fit up their arteries right now because they're the size of my pinky today. We can take the same technology and make it the size of my pinky nail so that we can actually send that heart device up a child's artery. Last one, and then I'll give John the floor here. Another investment we made, absolutely exciting for me. Right now, with most orthopedic procedures you have, how many people have a new knee or hip or a shoulder? Okay, Brenda. So anytime you have that, they're going to send you to a CAT scan and an MRI because we need the soft tissue that we get from the MRI, from the MRI, and we need the bone that the CAT scan picks up over here. Well, this team of scientists in the Netherlands said, wait a minute, why don't we just do the bone scan right from the MRI? Because then we don't have to have this harmful radiation. And most recent studies are showing radiation from CAT scans may be killing up to 100,000 people per year. And we have lots of people that aren't getting enough scans because it's too high in radiation. And so this team in the Netherlands said, well, gosh, what if we could do the CAT scan from the MRI? Everybody said it's impossible. There's no way to do that. I love this team. They said, watch us. And they did it. They built it. It's a simple software upgrade for any MRI machine. And it works. And we invested. And again, it wasn't 19 days, but 2 months later, we got FDA clearance on this. And so we're bringing this to the world. This technology, I believe, ultimately will save millions of lives, millions from cancer. And I get to be a part of that every day. So I'm going to show you real quick. This is a QR code. If you scan it with your phone, it would allow you to put time on my calendar. I'm not going to pitch our fund. Here's the problem with venture capital. It's really, really hard to do it with low minimum investments. So I have to say that with a huge apology, but I'm going to give you an option. We've done, most venture capital funds have $1 million minimum for funds like ours. We've been able to use our technology infrastructure to get that down to a $50,000 minimum. And I wish it was at $500. And someday we may get there with the technology we're developing under the hood. But if you are interested in investing and that minimum doesn't turn you away, then scan that and get my calendar or come see me. I'll do my best to get my calendar, but I'll mess it up without Julianne. But we'll talk. But I want to give you a better option if that $50,000 is not something that is even conceivable. One of my good friends, who is a fellow believer out of Columbus, Ohio, a gentleman named Will Zell, has created the first high-quality venture capital fund that allows minimums of, I think it's $500. And that company is called Zell Capital. If you Google it, Z-E-L-L, Zell Capital, I absolutely recommend it. And again, the reason I love venture capital, you get to help bring the future to the world. But it's really high risk, high reward. So that's a great alternative if our fund isn't on the roadmap, but you still want to be participating in that. Go check out Zell Capital. You'll have a very high quality option without a high minimum to do it. So Z-E-L-L. Tell them I sent you. They'll be extra nice. Good friend of mine, and I have no kickbacks. I don't own any of that company. I just believe in what they're doing. So thank you, everybody.
All right, thank you. Excellent panel to poke questions at. Sadly, we only have 15 minutes.